I just heard a lot of the conversation points, and honestly, I haven't come across a lot of people that have kind of gotten to the point that those of you on the panel have gotten to in terms of being able to look at their parent as or mother as a just as a human being. That y'all kept saying things that kind of followed under the same theme of moving past it requiring uh, empathy, which was 100% accurate, and also reflection and self-awareness. And that's kind of like the common thing that everybody seemed to be talking about, knowing that I mean, parents, mothers, they have a significant impact on your life, whether they're present, whether they're not present. Everybody has some type of wound, or even if it's not a wound, they have been impacted by their parent in both positive and negative ways. But the people that are self-reflective and the people that learn how to understand the whole context in terms of what are their parents' story, where do they come from, what causes them to think and behave the way that they do, that helps you develop a sense of empathy for them. And honestly, there are plenty of circumstances where I think a bad thing we started doing was this whole idea of just forgive and forget and just let it go and move on for the betterment of our kids, or so that our kids know their grandmom and their granddad. That's not necessarily good, because we can identify with some of the pain and some of the hurt that our parents have inflicted on us, and we develop that mentality of we're just going to allow them to see our kids, just because we don't want to deprive them from a relationship with their grandparents, not realizing that they can be doing the same type of damage to our kids as they did to us. But it just seems like we've always come up with these themes. And that therapist that talked, or that lady that was talking from the clip that you played, a problem that I had with that is that she kind of framed it as in this black women and black daughters kind of wounds that happened, and made it sound like this was something that was unique to them. This isn't unique to anyone. It's not even unique to women. I mean, this happens from you know men to men, from women to women, from women to men, like mothers to sons, sons to fathers. Like, all of these things are interconnected. So, you know what I mean? Like, everybody, I don't have too much more to say on it about how well everybody spoke on it, but definitely moving forward, that reflection, that empathy, that self-awareness, and that awareness to even know, like, this may not be the right time to forgive, or that your parents may be having things that they got to work through on their own. And if they're too old and stuck in their ways that they can't realize the damage they're doing to others, then, like you talked about, JR, you knew what kind of lane you had to deal with them in order to keep yourself safe, to keep your own peace, but also to make sure that you could still maintain some form of a relationship with her. So, everything everybody said was like, man, I tip my hat to y'all, because for y'all to even go through therapy with the stigma attached to it, and just be willing to do that work on yourself to learn about why you think, feel, and behave the way you do, that that's just a huge sign of just like personal growth.
Appreciate that, man. Definitely appreciate that. Yeah. And I was wondering about, the empathy. And I mean, my last two things. And parents, they're like, depending on their age, man, they're like children. You know, they're like children. Like, when they say once an adult, twice a child, like, parents lose confidence. So, how your lack of confidence might have been when you was like 16, 17, they go through that again in their late stages, their 60s and 70s. They lacking confidence, or they don't have any more control over your life. Once upon a time, their life was how your life went. And then when you ride off in the sunset and you running your own life, they like, damn, I feel left out. And some kids allow them to feel left out. Like, get out of here. I don't need your help no more. And they're like, damn, some parents want to be acknowledged for what they do. They could cut the grass. How the grass look? Oh, it looks great. You did a great job. They just want to hear that because they don't have the faculties, or maybe, their health is depleting. So they can't do the same stuff they used to do. They can't be the physical parent. Now they just kind of like the person sitting in a lazy boy that you come and sit with from time to time. So they want to be acknowledged for those small things, and they want to feel involved. Tell them about your dating life. Make them feel included. Make them feel like their opinion matters. Even if you don't take none of the advice they give you, at least let them have, a word. You're like, yeah, I told her, so she could brag to her friends. Yeah, I told her about that girl. I told her about dating them dudes. You know what I mean? Like, just want to feel included.
All right, I'm gonna play a little bit more clip, and then I'll go ahead and get mistaken in there. Thank you, Nelson. I know Nelson's still in the background, but thank you, sir, as well.
Other things that I may be doing, like you recognizing that you have guilt when things are not going well for other people. What are some of those other behaviors that women out there might be displaying but not even realizing could be stemming from a mother wound?
I think something that people don't like to look at, especially if I think about your audience, success as a trauma response.
You mean especially when you think about me?
I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about, the people who listen, the women who want it all. And I'm one of those women.
Explain that. That comes from us wanting to impress our mothers?
Well, it becomes how you see yourself. My worthiness is tied up in my achievement. How many degrees, how many certificates, how many raises, how few days I miss from work, how well I perform defines my value and increases my chances of being loved and accepted. It creates my own safety bubble, because if I'm just myself, if I make a mistake, if I don't know the answer, if I don't get it right the first time, if I don't get it right the second time, I run the risk of being rejected. I run the risk of being abandoned. And we think that because it's happened our whole life, we think it's normal. We think, oh, well, that's how it should be. And so we then become hypercritical of ourselves, but we don't think we're hypercritical. We think we're a perfectionist.
All right, Miss Taken, go ahead. It's on you, ma'am.
I agree with what their conversation is about, but I'm kind of, I guess, similar to Country Cookie as well, in the fact that I had a great mom. Like I wasn't in a single parent home. I had both parents, and I also had my maternal grandparents as well. So I was able to see what healthy relationship looked like from my mom's side of the family, and what dysfunction looked like on my dad's side. So I was able to kind of see both sides. But when I just kind of looked up, like, what are some of the manifestations of like a mother wound and a father wound, just to kind of see if there's a difference between how those things play out or show up in your life. And I think for me personally, what I saw, even in how great my mom was, I think I took from what I felt that she didn't do. I took that on as part of my personality. Like I am a fighter. Like if I see, somebody being taken advantage of, or like, that became my personality in just growing up, because I felt like my mom needed protection. And as a child, there wasn't anything that I could really do to protect, I guess, my mom from my dad. Like it wasn't no physical violence or anything like that, but more emotional stuff. That was my thing. I'm gonna go to bat for anybody. A lot of the fights that I had when I was younger had nothing to do with me. It was me sticking up for friends, things like that. But one of the things that I think Brown Sugar has said, like I realize I have daddy wounds, right? Is that for me, it took one, going to therapy. I was in therapy when I was younger. But then as an adult, I realized I needed to go back, because being in therapy at 16, 17 is different than when you're dealing with own issues of life when you get older. In that, when I was able to get to a point to realize that my dad could only do what he knew how to do at that time, I think it also took me being a parent myself to then kind of see the position that my parents were in. They going through life trying to learn just like I was. And it helped me develop more empathy when I had conversations with my daughter. And I'm thinking how great of a mom I was until we had a heart to heart. And she was able to say, well, these are some of the things that I was hurt by. And then I, in turn, knew how to handle that situation because of conversations that I was able to have with my parents. There was no, that didn't happen. It was, I'm sorry. That's it. What else could I say? Because if this is your experience, I can't negate what your experience was, whether it wasn't my intent or not. But she opened the door. I helped her open the door for healing as well, just by saying, I'm sorry. I gave her more context because, as parents, sometimes we protect our children from certain things. So they're not seeing the full picture. But now as an adult, I was able to share more things with her that was appropriate, where she can now was able to get a better context, and was then able to be more empathetic as well. But with my dad, that I still sometimes get triggered with certain things. But one of the biggest things that I do know that helped me, which what I think Brown Sugar Goddess asks, well, what do you do when you're trying to forgive them and you can't? It was like what Jay said, having empathy and realizing that they're human and they make mistakes, but also really, I also learned a lot about my dad's background and where a lot of his mother and father trauma occurred, which then played out in his parenting. And for me, and then they're finding out that there's other like mental health issues as well, which also allowed me to have more empathy and understanding towards him. But I know for me, I had to draw healthy boundaries with my father in order for me to maintain my peace and my health, my development that I had to kind of heal. So it's just certain things when we have conversations, I have to draw the line and say, no, that was not true. I'm not going to argue with you, but let's talk about something else. Things like that, just drawing those boundaries so we can maintain an open relationship. And sometimes if I need to step away to collect myself, I won't call and I won't feel guilty about it. I used to be like, well, I have to call because, no, I don't. I don't. So if I need to step away and take some time, I do that. And that's okay. So I just think finding healthy boundaries with your parents as you begin to heal is very necessary so that healing could occur. Like you said, when you break your leg or a bone, you have to stop putting weight on it. You have to sit back. You have to rest. Take your time. Same thing. So.
All right. Appreciate that, Miss Taken. Go ahead, Allie.
I mean, for me, I'm not sure if I can't speak to the little Black girl, so I'll speak to the little Asian girl. So I don't think I've ever sought validation from my mother because it's just, she's foreign. It's different. There's a language barrier. There's an emotional understanding barrier. So, my household, 2 parents, there's a massive amount of communication that happens. So everything is very blunt. You guys, I'm a paper baby. Like this is how this is going to roll. It's does she have her own trauma and her story? Is it wild? Absolutely. Has she ever pressed that against me? No. She's just happy that her kids are happy and healthy. She's always given us the freedom to do what we want, how we want, when we want, because the lay of the land is different. You can't compare. Like, she grew up in Korea, right? Like, I'm being raised in the United States. There's no comparison whatsoever. And her story, I mean, her mother died before she could have memory, when she was 3. No pictures, no photos, no nothing. So my entire upbringing with my mom is that, even on her birthday, she'll say, I wish I could have a picture of my mom. Aren't you happy you're looking at me? And I'm like, of course, like, I can see my mom. I can feel my mom. I can touch my mom. I can smell my mom. Like, she's there. So it's just like, I think the most validating thing I've ever tried to get from my mom was, she didn't understand, I chose design as my major. She said, why don't you be a lawyer? Like, typical Asian. I'm like, eh. Until one day she finally came up to me with a scratch card and she's like, oh, you're designing this at the casino. And I'm like, yes, 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 yes. You know what I mean? So it's like, there isn't, because I was raised in a different type of household. It's just, there's never any sort of healing, I guess, that I need to do to get from my mom, because it's just different. Yeah. So even when she calls me to this day, it's like, she'll speak in Korean a little bit, and she's like, are you, did you eat today? How are you? Are you doing good? How's work? Da, da, da. There's nothing like that. And then, my dad is American, so he's very honest in the way that he moves as well. They were traditional workaholic parents. We were latchkey kids, and he has said, as we've become adults, could I have done a better job at being more emotionally available to you girls? Absolutely. But did I do the best that I could? Absolutely. So I don't know, I don't know that I can relate entirely to seeking validation from my mother or either of my parents, because we take things at such face value. And I think the reason that is because of the dynamic of the family being, an intercultural, interracial military family. Like, you kind of have to move really strong as your own unit. So yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents into the mother wound from a little Asian girl's perspective.